Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, he says, all on who's spending good cause. Good deeds are opportunities, sparkling bright and true, raising you in the sight of Allah and adorning al-Jannah for you. So rush to earn his reward. Don't forget the oppressed, and when you go to sleep at night.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another show, A Time to Please Allah. I'm your host for today, Almir Smajlovic. Every time I say it, do not try to pronounce my name. It's a little bit difficult. Anyway, once again, my name is Almir Smajlovic, or Smailovic, or Ismailovic, like some of the locals like to call. And we are really pleased to have you with us today, inshallah. And hopefully you will enjoy and inshallah learn with us. We are not scholars, we are not, we're just regular folks like you. And that inshallah through our conversation, through talks, through discussion, really, it's very basic, but involving you inshallah, and hopefully you can give us a call. Number will be shown on the bottom of your screen inshallah, and then we can discuss different topics, as we always do. And do not forget that this is a live show from Dubai. Therefore, when you call us in, we'll be directly speaking to you inshallah. Every week we have different topics, something that relates to us living in this time, in this part of the world, basically concerning English-speaking audiences. And we tackle the topics, inshallah, that's really relevant to us. And today we have our guest, Brother Ahmed Hamid. He is a regular on the show. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
How are you, brother?
Alhamdulillah.
And today, inshallah, we're going to be discussing empowering our youth, okay, in a way that through the history, how we can get our youth to practice their deen and learn from our mistakes that happened in the history, or learn from those who are the best of us. Because we have to learn about history, we have to know where we came from and what we are, so that we can benefit ourselves for the future, and especially our youth. Because our youth, what's the biggest thing about youth? They're inexperienced, correct? They're tackling life, they're full of ambition, but sometimes that ambition filters itself in a wrong way.
Right.
You agree with me?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if the youth are not directed in a right direction, it would be the major weakness of the ummah. And if they go on the right direction, they are the biggest and the major strength for the ummah. So yes, I mean, we need to put right perspective in their minds in order to guide them in a productive way.
Exactly. And inshallah, in the next segment we'll have a guest coming with us who's an expert in Islamic history, and we'll tie all this up together. I think it's a very interesting day today, inshallah. Please stay with us, because you will learn some of the facts, some of the things that even myself I did not know. And mashallah, this brother is an expert, and we'll tie all this up. Let's go back to the youth. Nowadays when we see our youth, we interact with them, and subhanallah, according to Islam, we're still young. We have to remember that. When we say youth, what do we mean youth? Like, what's the age?
Right, as far as a youth is concerned, we say youth is up to 40. But general tendency which we hold is basically it's just teenagers, very young, shabab, that kind of reflection that actually is given. But it's just up to 40, you are actually a youth. And
yes.
And as per we analyze, this is the major portion of productivity that you can actually be yourself and share with the world today. And the concerning part is this major strength, that is the youth, are either they are divided, which means they are not focused, or they are disturbed with the current situation. So we need to come up with or reiterate the kind of balance that the previous people used to have, starting from the Anbiya and the Sahaba and all of the successive people, which we linked our history with, and set the things in a right way. And I call this as MMS. It's Muslim mindset. If the youth is programmed in a proper and systematic way, starting from their early age itself, this MMS, that is Muslim mindset, would actually yield proper direction, and it goes in a proper way.
When we talk about youth, let's just, so our audience knows, we know in Islam youth is up to 40. But we already know that the people who are 25, even younger than that, they're already adults, they think for themselves, and they're already at this age, they say, I wish I'd listened to my parents, because they knew better.
Sure.
And every one of us says that. When we talk about youth, we mean somebody less than 20, let's say, or 22, correct? Mm-hmm. Somebody who's like, let's say, 13, 14, and so on, like teenage years, basically. Right. And this is their age, like a lot of people call them young and restless, you know, full of energy, full of zeal. But how that energy is channeled is an issue for all of our youth.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes the flip switch for them comes on later on in life. But we need to be there when that happens, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, we need to understand and realize that this strength has to be, as I said, needs to be programmed. And programmed for what? As I was mentioning, MMS, that is Muslim mindset, is to set their vision properly first and let them understand what is the mission of their life and give them the values which we are blessed with, that is the Quran and the Sunnah. If you have these values from that early age and you have the mission in your mind and that's your goal to achieve. Like for example, if you ask a general question to our teenager or even to any youth for that matter, what is your vision? I mean, what do you want to achieve? Most of the people will say, I want to achieve this. Their thoughts does not, they do not go beyond the dunya level.
Yes.
But ideally, the vision of an individual Muslim should be that they want to see Allah Azza wa Jal. That's their vision. The best answer that you can get, I want to get Jannah. That's there. That's it. I mean, that's the limit. But there is no aspiration in order to set that high level vision, that is, I want to see Allah one day, inshallah. If this is there, then ideally, your framework fits well.
And we know, let's go back to history now. An example of this is, you can tell us, inshallah, is the youth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know those two youth in the battle of Badr. And we know the youth who were sitting on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who were so eager to learn, or so eager to see the fruits of Islam. And it was said about them, the ulama, they say, and you can inshallah help me with that, is that this youth, if they were here today, I mean, it would be just something amazing.
Absolutely. It would be a big resolution.
And we're talking about 13, 14-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, we're not exaggerating. They were the real people. Yes. I mean, as we know, we talked about the history, the best and the pure history is recorded in the Quran by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yes.
To understand and to map that this was really happened. I mean, they were not, angels. They were all humans, and they faced those challenges that we face today. So all of this was very natural. And what I believe strongly, and we know from the Quran and the Sunnah, that there are certain guiding principles. There were strong foundations that were laid deep down in their hearts and minds that resulted this ambition, this passion to serve Allah Azza wa Jal. And if we describe, I would say there are 5 things that were strongly grounded in their minds. Number 1 is the priority, to please Allah Azza wa Jal. So everything becomes literally insignificant. Whatever trouble, challenges, obstacles that they could face, everything looks to be trivial when they have that vision, that priority to please Allah Azza wa Jal. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. So we invest our time, our life, our sacrifice, energy, everything is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they had this clear-cut priority in their minds, and that's what actually supplemented or helped them to achieve this result. Similarly, they had Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with them, the best of all the time, I mean the role model of all the time. We still have his role model with us. So what I'm trying to indicate is that we need to ignite this thought process that today also this is possible that our youth can come up to that level, inshallah. There is a possibility that if we invest ourselves to the best, we can bring that kind of results, inshallah.
Inshallah. And I think also it's very important that we know our history, because know where we came from. And you know, I'll go back to existence of Muslims in certain lands.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who question Muslims' existence in those lands, a lot of non-Muslims, the wars that have been fought and so on, they actually question existence of these Muslims or their identity in those lands.
Sure.
Okay, you know, we know one thing is when there is a war, people die. But sometimes the bigger war, it's the war of psychological war, which happens.
Intellectual war.
Intellectual war, which is like denying your history.
Sure.
Denying your existence, denying your right to the place, or for example, the reason I'm bringing this up, Bosnia, where I'm from, and now the big battle is they're saying, for example, for us Muslims in land, because we've been there for thousands of years, we accepted Islam about 500 to 600 years ago and so on, but they're denying. They said, no, you did not exist. You just came from somewhere.
Right.
You were not there. And this is the thing. If you study your history, know your identity, this will help you in the long run.
Absolutely. I mean, knowing history is a powerful tool to get motivated, to get energized, to be revived. And this is really important because, you know, as you said, people think that our identity doesn't exist in the past. Or if it was existing, it was nothing.
What was
not
that?
To be mentioned.
What was that Mughal in India? His name was Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb, yeah. And some of the nationalists from India, they were questioning him, and they called them Hitler of those times, and they called them like you know, such an evil ruler. And yet, subhanAllah, Muslims came in his defense because they knew who he was. And even some of their own people, they said, no, he was actually he was better than their own rulers.
Absolutely.
And this is knowing your history, because people will try to cloud.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the set agenda of the anti-Islamic movements and the people of that nature, to actually either malign your history or to defeat that there was no actual prominent significant history that you have to quote or mention. And because of this agenda set, and I mean they are supremely successful in doing so far, because if we see our own selves, and you know, the vast majority of the ummah, they don't know their own history,
and that's a problem, isn't it?
This is
we're failing at that.
It is.
We're failing at that.
It is. And primarily, you know, as you were mentioning, the values that were there at the time of, you know, the youth of time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as I was mentioning, they were very close to the Quran. I mean, whenever there is a history, we link it with the Quran, because Quran talks about all the Anbiya and their nations and what happened. So what was the success of behind their, you know, stories, what was the failure of the people who rejected it. They were all, it talks about history. It is all about as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, فَقْصُصِ الْقَصَصِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَفَكَّرُونَ. So you need to actually reflect upon the stories. That is the history. That is the blessed moments that they faced actually.
You know, coming from personal experience, for example, you know, ideally, a youth of 10 years old, 11, 12, should be reading books like Rahiq al-Makhtoum, The Seal Nectar,
True.
about Sirah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, should be reading the Qasas al-Anbiya, like these things, you know, are you could say, very far, very long history, long time ago, yeah? We're talking about thousands of years. But ideally nowadays that doesn't happen. Unfortunately, at this age, we're learning something else. Our youth are learning something else. And maybe they will read a book by the time they're 18, 17. And this is what happens to us. I mean, because, you know, there's always trials on the path to truth, you know. And this is one of the things. And I think that telling our children, our youth, and empowering them in this way, that they learn about this, subhanAllah, it makes one mindset work really hard.
Absolutely.
And I've talked to some people, and one of the person who's quite a big intellectual, a brother, and he's, mashallah, very strong, you know, in his intellect and so on. He said, when I retire from his regular job, he says, all I will do is just to write encyclopedia of Islam in that land. You know, the history. He said, we need to know this.
Sure.
We need to have date by date, year by year, what happened, because people will try to deny everything.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Quran always encouraged us in order to learn our past, our history, our existence in the past, and the great things that was done, in the past. And of course, those mistakes, the downfall, as we say, after 12th or 13th century. I mean, the downfall. What was actually the cause of that downfall, or what was actually the rise of the Muslim nations? I mean, we know that the world faced the dark ages, especially the Europe faced the dark ages from 9th to 12th century, and that was the peak of the Muslim civilization. People don't know about it. People don't know what inventions, what contributions, what success they have given to the world.
And I don't know about you, whenever I talk about history, it really excites me. It really, I want to know, I want to learn. And inshallah, next segment, we're going to have a brother who's going to tell us some of the facts and some of the tidbits.
Inshallah.
And it's very interesting, inshallah, how do we learn our history and tie it up with our youth, inshallah. So we leave you for this segment. Come back, inshallah, after the short break. Jazakum al-khair wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Please Allah, a chance, please Allah, a chance to gain reward I will spend on you, he said.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to our show today, A Time to Please Allah. In our first segment, we talked about empowering our youth through history, through our history, and in order to, inshallah, to, better ourselves and help our youth in gaining this a great blessing of Islam and Iman. And inshallah, we have our guest today, who is an expert in Islamic history. His name is Abdul Malik Taylor, and he's a revert to Islam. Correct?
That's absolutely
welcome
correct.
back.
Yeah, that's absolutely
correct.
correct.
Actually, not welcome back. Welcome for the first time. Inshallah, we'll be welcome back again.
Alhamdulillah.
So we were talking about in the earlier how history is important for us, isn't it? How history is important to Muslim, not only youth but to everyone, in order to learn.
Yes.
And to identify ourselves.
Yes.
And when you have something in the history, it makes you proud.
No, absolutely, it does. It does.
Doesn't it? And it makes you feel really proud, it makes you feel good. And not only that, but makes you, feel like, subhanAllah, the people from the back, they lived. And we always say, we look at the Sahaba, for example. We say, Sahaba sacrificed so much, for example, to bring Islam to far distant lands. I was just in Maldives recently, and Maldives, for example, I'm just mentioning an example, used to be Buddhist until recently, 400 years ago, 500 years ago, not that long ago. And you know how Islam came to, subhanAllah, to Maldives? One trader who was from Morocco, one businessman, a trader.
MashaAllah.
He came, and the way he dealt with the people, and the people, subhanAllah, and he invited them to Islam. The whole islands of Maldives
MashaAllah.
accepted Islam.
MashaAllah.
Fully. So now Maldives are 99% Muslim.
That one effort.
Yes. Imagine.
MashaAllah.
So, Brother Abdul Malik, I'm talking too much. You should have the word. So tell us, inshallah.
No problem. I just want to make a small correction. What I actually specialise in, perhaps an expert in, is Muslim history of Britain.
Muslim history of Britain.
That's more specific, as opposed to, for example, the Sirah, even Andalusia as well. However, I accept them. I try to incorporate that on the tours that we run in London as well, and outside of London. But one of the earliest connection you find with Britain and the Muslims was a king called King Offa, who lived in the 8th century, and he minted his coin with his head on one side and the Shahada on the other side. And this you can actually see in the British Museum.
Subhanallah.
Yeah.
Didn't I tell you that, Brother Ahmed, that it's going to be something exciting?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Some tidbits and facts that are very interesting, subhanAllah.
Yeah,
8th century.
Yep.
So these were not, even at that time, the empire was not British Empire. It was, what was it called?
It was still building, basically, didn't it? It was separate countries.
Anglo-Saxon or something?
Anglo-Saxon, yep, absolutely. But this was the part where he was actually in the kingdom of Mercia, which is part of England, which was quite close to the border of Wales. But this is one of the earliest connections we have. Then, like, even past that, we have the interaction to do with the Vikings and the Muslims as well. An interesting fact is, even myself, even though I was a Hindu, I was growing up in the British education system, we always taught how the Vikings went westwards to like England, occupied Ireland, went to Greenland, and some people say even to America. But this is the strange fact is, there are more writings with regards to the Vikings in the Eastern books, in the Arabic sources. And that really surprised me. You could find like, Ibn Fadlan even writing about what he saw about the Vikings.
Let me ask you a question. We're talking about Vikings and Muslims, and our youth probably, they will ask, I'm asking for the youth now. They will ask about the movie 13th Warrior.
Yes, I know that one, yes.
Yeah, I've seen that movie back a long time ago, and in it there is a Muslim warrior who goes with Vikings.
Yes.
And I think the portrayal is quite, I would say, positive in a way, where he is portrayed as somebody who is praying, somebody who is honest, and how true is that concept?
There are some elements of that movie which are factual.
Okay.
For example, how he gave dawah to the Vikings, how he saw them, and some of the Viking, some of the Viking practices which are mentioned in there are factual as well. So, for example, how when the Viking warrior, the male warrior, would die, the female warrior would actually, die as well at the same time. And what would happen is when the Vikings were buried, they would be buried with the belief that they would be reincarnated. So they were buried with a lot of jewelry, a lot of coins. And this is what you find in Europe.
Isn't this a lot of similarities with Hinduism?
In terms of the focus of like reincarnation, there is
dying with some parts.
Yeah, that part for definite. Yeah. But what's interesting is that now the people are finding ships that date back to the Viking time, and they find Arabic coins, the dirhams. They're finding Arabic jewelry as well, and people are wondering, well, hold on a minute, they must have been interacting with the Muslims as well. So this is like something factual and historical that we can take back to the time of the Vikings. But don't forget the Vikings. They covered like conquered Western Europe, including Britain, and they even had battles with the Moors, the Muslims of Spain, and they even occupied Seville as well for a number of days.
Oh, really?
Yep. And until the Muslims
we know
regrouped.
about Vikings, they were great sailors.
Yes. Yeah, so that was one side they had interactions, and the other side is when they went eastwards, they even made it to Baghdad as well. Down the River Volga.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so the whole...
And they made it to US too. No,
that's what people are suggesting.
Actually, there's proof of that. It's just...
So I mean, that's like, how even the Vikings made it to Britain, and that's how people are wondering, when they're finding ships basically off the coast of Britain, the British Isles, why do they have like, Arabic dirhams within the ship as well, within the shipwreck? But when you think about it, they had interaction with the Muslims.
Let me, both of you brothers, you're from India, right?
Sure.
And your origins, your ancestors are from India.
That's right.
And we know British colonized India for a very long time.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us more about this history of Islam through India that ties up to UK or to British Empire at that time. What can you tell us?
I mean, the original, if you like, the occupation, how Britain started to rule India was through the East Indian Company.
Yes.
They were given certain rights, and they made agreements with the rulers of India. They were in debt, so they gave more rights to the East Indian Company, and that's, if you like, how they managed to get into India, and then it became like, by royal charter, they were given more rights, and they basically, then Britain basically eventually, started to control the country from Britain. And there's even like a connection here as well, like even in the Supreme Court, which is the highest court within Britain as well, some of the Commonwealth countries as well, that they used to discuss Sharia law in Britain and how it could be implemented in India.
SubhanAllah.
And this is an actual building that we go to on the London tour.
Interesting. Interesting. So you're doing these tours in London?
Yes.
Of
London as well as outside of London as well. But that's one location we would actually cover.
SubhanAllah. That's very interesting.
What we also find, as earlier I mentioned about the coin, This was not the first coin. We have Arabic writing within a British coin.
Mm-hmm.
Can I get from behind?
Huh?
Can I get from behind? The actual coin. And
You have a, where's it?
I have an actual copy of the coin as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. I think this. I think these items are quite significant in history, and they have to be handled with care. Therefore, I have the glove. Don't be scared, huh? It's white glove.
And inspiring too, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, what we're holding, inshallah, hopefully I'm going to be holding in my right hand, will be a piece of history. You're talking about these coins are how old, brother?
This coin is about 200 years old.
200 years.
200 years old.
MashaAllah.
Let's go to the envelope. These are coins that were minted for the East Indian Company. However, they didn't make it to India because the ship sank.
Mm-hmm.
And have a look at that.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, you can see here. Let me see if because I only have one glove. It's a little bit difficult. I don't want to touch with my hand, although I might have to. Okay, here we go. If you can see, if you zoom in with the camera, you can see here. Well, it's hard to see, but there's Arabic handwriting. I mean, written here in the coin, and the year is. What's the year exactly here? And these coins were made of copper, correct? Am I right in saying
That's
that?
right, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see 1808 or something like that, yeah. So 200 years plus. So this is one of the items that they made with Arabic inscription.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Here. Okay. Yeah. Okay, they will try to zoom in to see. Okay. Here we go. You can see a little bit. Still hard to see, but you can see there is inscription here. If I shine it off the light here a little bit, you can see there's some inscription in Arabic. But the other items we're going to show you, inshallah, they are, better seen. I will hand you back this coin, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. So what are some of the items we see here? If the camera can point here, you see on the table here.
This one's okay.
There's a bunch of items.
Okay.
That historical item. This is another one.
This
Tell
is
us more about it.
This is an actual
Tell us
image.
more about this one.
This is an image of a menu card that was for Queen Victoria, and she obviously lived in the Victorian era, and she died about 1906. And she was the longest, at that time, she was the longest serving royal member of the family, British royal family. And she had a Muslim servant.
Which is?
And this is him here, which is
Pointed in this top corner here.
That's him there, yes. That's them
right
in the corner.
Right here, yeah. And then?
This is how we actually used to look like, and he was a Hafiz of the Quran. Strange thing was, he even had two wives in England at the same time.
Oh, subhanallah.
And they used to wear the niqab, used to walk around with Queen Victoria in Windsor Castle.
Wait a second. Let's backtrack. Wait a second. Ahmed, did you hear that?
Yeah, but it's unimaginable.
He had two wives, and his wife wore niqab,
Yes.
and they're walking in England 150 years ago.
Roughly about that time.
Because Queen Victoria, she ruled for 40 years or so.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
More than 40 years.
Yeah, more than 40 years. And at that time, England was more powerful than
Oh
today.
yeah, it was, I mean,
It was height of power.
She was, the empress.
more powerful than
Commonwealth.
US now. But anyway, interestingly, wearing niqab, walking on the street,
Walking on the grounds of Windsor Castle.
walking on
That
the
I
grounds
can
of
say. I don't know
Windsor.
about the streets of Britain though.
But still,
Walking on the
Windsor
ground.
Castle.
Oh yes.
This is the
I mean, Queen
For
Victoria herself.
example, a big thing now, I have to go back to our history nowadays, history as in a month ago. For example, in Canada or in UK or others, they say when you come to a government building, like for example, they will not say niqab is not allowed to wear, they will not forbid it on the street, but they will say when you enter a public office,
Yes, you have to.
a parliament, a building, you have to take it off.
Yes.
Yet we find in history, in Windsor Castle, that the woman with niqab was walking.
I mean, the strange part to do the
And that's his brother's wife, mashallah.
the strange part to even to do with the issue of the Islamic veil. This is another part we educate the people about. This concept does exist within British customs.
Subhanallah.
And I will mention this because it's to do with the time of when the Crusaders went to the Middle East, had the exchanges, but the Crusaders brought back practices from the Muslims. And there's a number of practices they brought back. It was castle architecture. We have a castle in England that's a replica of Saladin's castle in Syria.
Subhanallah.
Yeah. And that's called Beeston Castle.
And this is
Another practice primarily to do with the issue of the niqab was when a woman gets married in a church, they wear the bridal veil.
Subhanallah.
And that practice comes from the time of the Crusaders, who adopted the practice from the Muslims.
Allah. Isn't the same thing that in universities the gown and the dress is actually a thobe?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
this is from University of Cordoba.
Yes.
In Spain. And even, you know how I learned this, subhanAllah? This was not from a Muslim. I did not learn this from a Muslim. It was my art teacher back in Slovenia in Europe, who was so pridefully talking about Islamic history. And he said, you guys don't know anything. He's telling us, the students. Most of the students were not Muslim. He said, you think you know everything. He says, in Cordoba in 1200s, 1100 or even 1000 or so of year, he said there was a hospital, 80 hospitals in one city, and there was a university where students used to come from Paris, from London, all of these cities. It was the center of, it was 1 million people living in the city at that time.
It was I mean, I wouldn't even say it was a European city of learning. I mean, we had people from England going there to learn as well.
Yes, it's a known fact. And they say because the university, upon graduation, they had to wear local dress, which was the thobe, or similar to this. And they had a head cover, like a turban or something similar to that. And therefore, anywhere you graduate in the world right now.
But there's a strange thing here. I know some of the Muslim youth, and my advice to Muslim youth is, sometimes we may see practices that may seem alien from our heritage. However, when you look at it in reality, where has it been adopted from? It's been from the Muslim practices. So this is like the whole idea about the university gown when they graduate comes from the Muslims.
SubhanAllah. So you're following your ancestors. Very interesting. Very interesting. Anything else you have to, inshallah, to show us?
Okay. Let me ask you a question. If you had the present Queen, Queen Elizabeth, and you had somebody with a turban and a sword next to them, what do you think? How would it be portrayed, perhaps by the media? They probably think it's a security risk or something. Would you say?
Oh, big time.
Big time. Okay.
Big time. They would say, oh, you know, she's a sympathizer of such people. She would be even put in that basket, which would be like, such a horrible thing.
This would be a good continuation of Spain, and how this is a part of Spain basically that became Gibraltar, which is known as Jabal Tariq. Well, this is an old.
Which still nowadays
it's not in circulation, but
even nowadays it's a British protectorate, correct?
Yes, you're right. Yes, it's still part of.
This is £5 sterling.
Territory. But what we find on the side you're looking at, you find Queen Elizabeth. On the reverse side, who's that?
Subhanallah. Can you please zoom in? You have to see this. Okay, camera 2 will zoom in, inshallah. Just give us a moment. This is, I want people to see the picture first.
No, absolutely, I agree.
And then I will say the name. I'll try it. This is a Muslim commander known in history as Tariq ibn Ziyad. Allahu Akbar. Who conquered?
Gibraltar and went into Spain.
And he went all the way up to Poitiers in France.
Poitiers, absolutely.
In 732
yep.
of Gregorian calendar. Hijri was about 100 or so, or 110. And subhanallah, this was on a money note of £5 sterling of government of Gibraltar.
Absolutely.
Is it still in?
It's not in circulation anymore. No.
But you can still use this one.
No, you can't anymore. No,
because I see the date is 1995. As recent as
It's out of
1995.
yeah, as recent as 1995. I mean, it's out of circulation now. But this actually shows you, you know, even to the whole idea, the concept of having a member of the royal family and somebody else, which nowadays, unfortunately, you know, somebody wearing a turban with a sword would be portrayed as a terrorist. When you have this, it's, you know, it shocks even the Muslim community. It also shocks the non-Muslim community, and it challenges perhaps both people's perceptions.
Subhanallah. Very interesting. I mean, looking at history of Spain, a lot of people viewed the Muslims when they came to Spain as if they liberated the Spain, they enlightened the Spain, because a lot of, like we see, of practices of the Western world nowadays comes from Spain.
Absolutely.
All the knowledge, all the things.
There is this misconception that even the Muslims have, that Europe was living in the Dark Ages. However, this was not the case. There was a part of Europe that was living in the Dark Ages.
Yes.
And that's, you know, that's how we need to perhaps correct that part of history.
And
there was a golden era which existed within Europe.
Spain and Sicily and Malta were not part of it, because they were ruled by Muslims.
Well, that's how it's portrayed, but in reality, when you look at what continent they were on, they're clearly in Europe.
Yeah, well, that's Europe.
Yeah, but when we look at this is the misconception that non-Muslims would say, as well as Muslims, saying, you know, Europe was in the Dark Ages. No, there was a golden era which was parallel to that
very interesting.
time.
If you meet Spanish citizens, people who speak Spanish, they have words in their language that still are in Arabic, like kha and tha, you know, like tha, you know, like very soft, and kha and all of this. And they even have some hard letters and still exist in their language that was left over from Arabic at that time. And even though in Malta, I know I've talked to people, Malta is a small country, not many people know about it. But if they look at their language, there are so many words in their language from Arabic. So these are the basically proofs.
Absolutely.
That Muslims did reside in those places, that they lived, that they've flourished, and people, they accepted them and they copied them.
They were sophisticated. In fact, I mean, they just didn't live, you know, normally. They were sophisticated in various fields. I mean, that's what I mean. I mean, you
had street lighting in Andalusia before the rest of the parts of Europe.
Subhanallah. My teacher used to also tell me, he says, you know, when people in Europe did not take shower, ever, you said the Dark Ages, he says there was public washrooms and public showers in Egypt, in Tunisia, in Spain, because a lot of people could not afford to have a shower in their houses, but yet they were accessible in every street, every nook and corner.
I mean, this is something, even this practice of the bath, like the Turkish bath, this practice was adopted by people in Britain, 1800s, and they gave recognition to the, as I say, the Turks or the Ottomans. Obviously, they give recognition to the Muslims, saying that they could see how clean they were, and that's when they decided to bring the Turkish baths into Britain.
Wasn't there a fact, I have to mention this, I say that many times, I don't know if I said on the show, but it was known that Louis XIV never took a bath in his life. This is a fact if you read the history. And at that time they looked at the water and cleaning as something not pure. So they would just put powder on themselves on occasions, the white powder. We know this one. We see it in the movies and, you know, even the pictures. And yet the Muslims, subhanAllah, I mean, we know, even Rasulullah said in the hadith, Ahmed, you help us with the hadith. What's the hadith that Rasulullah said? What do you say of a person who makes wudu 5 times a day or prays 5 times a day? What happens with his...
It's the most clean person.
Most clean person. Subhanallah. We have to take a short break. Please come back with us. This is a very interesting topic. I don't know, I find it interesting. Maybe you don't, but hey, I'm selfish. So come back, please, after these short messages for our last segment of the show.
Please Allah, a chance to gain reward, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, he said.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to our last segment. Very short segment, but today, mashallah, I'm very excited to have our 2 guests, and Brother Ahmed Hamid, who's been here many times before, and the first time today, Brother Abdul Malik Taylor. Taylor, yes. And we were talking about previously, if you're just joining us, if you missed the first part of the show, please, you can go on our Facebook page, A Time to Please Allah, where the link will be posted for this show today, so you can catch up the previous segments, because they're very interesting, in my opinion, but you can find that for yourself. And Brother Abdul Malik, we talked about history of Muslims in UK, nowadays UK, back in the day was British Empire. And we showed some pictures, and we've seen some of the items and some of the very interesting facts, and how, you know, let's just go back a little bit. When I read about history of Islam in UK and the British Empire at that time, they were somewhat friendly towards Muslims at some points. Nowadays, the media and everything is just turned the whole thing upside down. But I mean, even if you look at the Muslims in Palestine and so on, and the idea of the Israeli state, it was not supported by the British from the beginning.
No, it wasn't. No.
Right? I mean, this happened just recently. We're talking about 1930s or late 1920s. This idea or maybe 1920s, like I said. But previously, they were not supporting the Israeli state. The creation of Israel at that time, wasn't that the case?
That was a case in some quarters. Yeah.
In some quarters, okay. So there was always that issue. Anything else you want to show us?
Anything else?
Or tell us. No need to show us.
I will show you this. This is another antiquity.
Okay.
This is, you need to wear a glove.
Yep. Gotta wear gloves. These are historical items.
This is a building that looked exactly like a masjid.
Let me see.
However, it wasn't a masjid. It had minarets, it had towers, and that's, if you look at the front part there, obviously you can see a symbol of the Muslim crescent, and it's called Alhambra Theatre.
Yes, you see yes, you see the crescent and the star, signs of Islamic signs, you could say, and it says Alhambra Theatre. Yeah.
So they in the 1800s they recognized
you would
Alhambra.
Say this is a pamphlet of an Islamic center in UK or something.
That's what people may assume. And even if you open it, people would actually think that the actual building is a masjid in the 1800s.
Let me just open this quickly. Oh, subhanallah. Yeah? You see this one? Just a second. There you go. It seems like it's a masjid.
It's not a masjid.
And then another one. And inside here is...
That's the program.
And the program that's...
This is basically a program of a building that used to exist, and it was called Alhambra Theatre. It doesn't exist anymore. It used to exist up until the 1930s. But obviously it shows that Britain were interested with regards to even the history, architecture of that exists within Muslim Spain. And one interesting fact is, there was even somebody called Sidney Bernstein. Now, I don't know whether you know any Media Mongols, basically empires within England, but there is one called Granada TV.
Granada TV.
Granada TV. Sidney Bernstein was a Jewish person, a working class chap who came from East London, and he basically he made a trip to Andalus, so Granada, looked at Alhambra. He absolutely fell in love with it, and that's what he named his empire afterwards. And if you look at some of the first cinemas, or the grand cinemas that exist in London, some of the Muslim journalists even state this is just like a replica of the palaces of Spain. And it was replicated upon Muslim architecture. And you'd be surprised with that. And this is like, even though he's made it into, used to be a Granada Theatre, moved it onto Granada TV. And there's even a famous English soap called Coronation Street, and that's actually produced by them as well.
Oh, Coronation Street, I've heard of it.
You heard of it, yeah. It's made by Granada TV. But look at the name, Granada TV.
Yeah.
Who it was started by.
SubhanAllah, very interesting. I wish we could talk more about it, but we have to cut the short. Well, actually, it's been almost an hour, the show, but this is very quick. We passed by well, you can't hear it because I'm wearing the glove. Anyway, Jazakallah khair for coming and joining us. Inshallah, hopefully we'll have you again.
Yeah.
If you're around. Brother Ahmed Hamid, Jazakallah khair for coming.
Barakallah feek.
And hopefully our youth, this was the topic today, our youth learn some interesting facts about Muslim history, which was a recent history.
Definitely.
But in order for us to be more proud of our heritage, so that inshallah we become better Muslims, better human beings, better neighbors, better schoolmates, and so on and so forth, and carry the message of Islam and show it in our actions. Once again, Jazakallah khair, Brother Abdul Malik Taylor, Brother Ahmed Hamid, and inshallah join us again next week at the same time, live from Dubai, from 8 p.m. onwards until 9. A time to please Allah. I am your host for today, Almir Smajlovic. Once again, do not try to pronounce it. Don't worry about it. You'll see me again. Just remember the hair, the glasses, and the beard. Then you know who it is. See you inshallah next time. Assalamu alaikum.
A time to please Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, he says, all on who's spending good cause. Good deeds are opportunities, sparkling bright and true, raising you in the sight of Allah and adorning al-Jannah for you. So rush to earn his reward. Don't forget